The House is expected to take up final approval on President Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief plan later this week. The bill passed in the Senate over the weekend. It includes $1,400 stimulus checks. The fewer Americans will qualify this time. It also increases the child tax credit to $3,600 per child and sets aside $34 billion to make government-provided health insurance more affordable. No Republicans supported the Senate plan or the original House bill. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Monday that President Biden is not taking Democratic support for the bill for granted.
Obviously, our focus continues to be on the American Rescue Plan, getting it across the finish line. The president is taking nothing for granted. I will note that the plan that the Senate passed this weekend puts us one huge step closer to passing one of the most consequential and most progressive pieces of legislation in American history.
For more, let's bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Hi there, Nancy. So as we heard Jen Psaki say, the White House is taking nothing for granted regarding passage of the relief plan in the House. Give us a sense of the dynamics there. Why is that?
That's because they have very little margin for error here, Elaine. They know that they can't count on any Republican support, so they need to keep almost every single House Democrat on board. And over the weekend, that became a concern because there were some progressive Democrats who were disappointed that there were some trims to the bill when it went through the Senate, most notably that the federal unemployment benefits were cut back from $400 a week to $300 a week to get West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin on board. And so the case that the White House has been making, both publicly, you saw it there from Jen Psaki, but also in phone calls to various House Democrats is, look, we get it that you were a little disappointed about these trims around the margin, but this package is still, by and large, the same package that the president proposed when he first came into office. It is worth $1.9 trillion. And as you heard Jen Psaki say, they are touting it as one of the most progressive pieces of legislation ever. The House Democratic Progressive Caucus came out in support of it, so it doesn't look like the bill is in any trouble among Democrats right now. I spoke to White House senior advisor Cedric Richmond a short time ago. He said it's possible that there could be one House Democratic defection, but he doesn't expect more than that.
So, Nancy, let's talk timing here. What is the latest on when President Biden is expected to sign this bill? And then how soon after that will Americans actually start to receive relief, including stimulus checks?
So House Democrats were hoping to hold the vote tomorrow. It looks like that may now be slipping a bit simply because of logistics, and it could happen on Wednesday instead. And the White House has made it clear that they want President Biden to be able to sign this right away. In fact, the White House announced today that he'll be holding a primetime address on Thursday night. They would, of course, very much like for him to be able to tout this passage of his signature piece of legislation in that primetime address. And then we're told that the checks could go out, at least electronically, into people's checking accounts by the end of the month. And I should say that that is pretty conservative. In previous rounds of stimulus, we've actually seen some people start to see those amounts show up in their accounts electronically within even a few days. So it sounds like the Treasury Department and IRS are being a little cautious when they talk about it right now and just saying that some people should start to see their checks by the end of the month.
All right. So many Americans wanting to know what that time frame actually is. So, Nancy, what is next on the Biden administration's agenda after the relief bill is passed?
So the White House has not said what exactly they want to tackle next. And that's because they've been trying to keep the focus entirely on the American relief package. They don't want people getting distracted. But it certainly looks like they are teeing infrastructure up to be the next major spending package to be tackled by both the White House and, at the very least, Democrats on Capitol Hill. The president has had a few high-profile meetings about it here at the White House. His aides have pointed to particular pieces of legislation that have passed or have come close to passing in recent years in the House and the Senate as sort of a blueprint for what they'd like to tackle. There have been sort of initial forays into bipartisan conversations about what the package might look like and how big it might be and how you might go about paying for some of it or all of it. But that is really in the early stages right now, and it certainly isn't the only big policy initiative on the president's plate. He's also talked a lot about immigration reform. The House, as you know, just passed H.R. 1, this big voting rights bill. They'd very much like the White House to champion passage of that bill in the Senate, which would be a very heavy lift. And so there are a number of different ways that this White House could go next. But certainly, if I was a betting person, I put my chips on infrastructure.
What about minimum wage, Nancy? One of the items that some Democrats had hoped to include in the relief bill was a minimum wage increase to $15 an hour. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders introduced an amendment, but Republicans and 8 Democratic senators opposed it. So how does the White House feel about passing a minimum wage increase in the future?
They insist that this is still a big priority for President Biden, and they have made a point of saying that he is not engaged in any negotiations right now over bringing that minimum wage goal down from $15 an hour to, let's say, $10 or $11 or $12 an hour. The reason that they are saying that so explicitly is because there are some Senate Democrats, like Joe Manchin, most particularly of West Virginia, who has said he might be willing to go up to, say, $11 an hour, but not further than that. And so what the White House is trying to do is tamp down on talk that perhaps this president is already watering down some of his priorities. Now, how they will get that across the finish line, Elaine, is still anyone's guess. When I talk to White House officials, they say there are a number of different ways that they could try to tackle this. They could try to put it into a piece of popular legislation. They could try to push it through using reconciliation, even though that wasn't successful the last time. Clearly, it's going to be very difficult to do this because the votes for a straight $15 an hour minimum wage to do it and get it across the finish line in the Senate with 60 votes. It's hard to see how exactly they do that right now, but they insist they're still very committed to finding a way.
All right, CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez. Nancy, always great to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you too, Elaine.